Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Walks, Norwich City, obviously in pre-season action here today. Their second pre-season friendly of what is quite a hectic July, and we're going to be bringing you the team news very shortly. Hopefully you can hear us and everything okay. Like I say, it's a bit rough and ready, but this piece of content always is. You love it for that reason. Plenty of yellow and green shirts dotted about. Connor Southwell joined by Paddy Davitt. It's hot, isn't it, Pad? That's my first. I mean, we opened Tuesday's team news video speaking about the weather. It's hot today. I mean, we moaned about the rain then. There's no moaning about rain today.
The only H2O I'm seeing is the sprinklers have gone on the pitch, which looks a bit on the lush side, I think we were discussing. So that'll be interesting how that plays out. Yeah, we're not made for this type of weather. So we're sat at the very far reaches of the main stand, and it's still oppressively warm up. That's by the by. Looking down at Norwich players here, and we're about to get a team news. I'll be surprised if we don't have two pretty distinct 45s, because it's going to be hot work today, which, given it's all about fitness at this stage, that's the object of the exercise, isn't it? So, we're playing guess the clues as we can see who's here and who might not be here. So all will be revealed in hopefully about 3 or 4 minutes' time. But, stage 2 of pre-season.
Yeah, there's somebody in a parrot costume, which, I mean, fair play to whoever is in that today, because it's not weather for a mascot. But I mean, we're probably not going very much for realism in terms of that, are we? But there we go. This is, like I said, I think this is probably, I mean, you mentioned the pitch. I think this is probably the best I've seen the pitch here for a pre-season friendly. Certainly in terms of grass coverage. We've been here before, and there have been various sections of the pitch that maybe there hasn't been grass in. That's the nature, I guess, of where Norwich City are playing today. And like you say, we'd expect probably 2 11s today. We've seen Shane Duffy. We've seen Vicente Reyes here today, although I think he was at Barnet on Tuesday and didn't feature. I looked down onto the pitch and see Crystal Solis, John Rowe, Dimi Yanulis, Sørensen, Ida, Hernandez, Tim Krul is here. So I'm now beginning to see Sam McCallum, Kenny McLean. So lots of Norwich City players here, a coach full, and like I say, probably enough to field 2 11s. Ashley Barnes also here. We haven't seen Sargent as well. We haven't seen Borja Sainz yet, but that does not necessarily mean he's not here. It seems almost as if those who are on the pitch at the moment are kind of that second half 11. We'll get the answer for sure in a couple of minutes' time. And there's so many players that probably is going to have to be the nature of it. Haven't seen Andrew Omobamidele either. Pad, in terms of test, I mean, what would you expect from today? I guess it's very similar to Barnet, isn't it, really, in terms of predominantly being about fitness, and also an opportunity, I guess, for a lot of these fans to see Norwich City for the first time since the end of that championship season last year.
Yeah, we don't speak about that anymore, Connor. That's gone. So, but you're right. Yeah, for the vast majority who trooped away from that last game against Blackpool, pretty miserable. This probably will be their first touch point. I think there's about 400 or so, maybe slightly more at Barnet. Kudos to them midweek. But this probably feels like the start of the journey for a lot of the Norwich fans who are already streaming in as I look over. The Tennyson Road goal. We discussed it. It'd be interesting what the attendance is today. You thought in the sort of 2,000 bracket, maybe. What else would you be doing on a nice summer's afternoon in Norfolk other than watching Norfolk's 2 Premier clubs? And it's good. Yeah, it's test level. Yeah, I think. I mean, you look at it, these are obviously 1 level below Barnet, aren't they, in the non-league pecking order? I'm going to stop there.
I'll have the team. Would you like the team? You'd like the team. This is how Norwich City line up for the first half, at least. It's Krul in goal, Stacey, Duffy, Gibson and McCallum as the back 4, Nunez and McLean as the midfield 2, Springett, Sargent and Pochetta playing behind Ashley Barnes. There's been a lot of discussion about those strikers and the dynamics of them. Norwich start pre-season here today with Sargent seemingly behind Barnes, certainly in the way that the club graphic is produced anyway, and those listed on the subs bench, Reyes, Mumba, Tompkinson, Hills, Giannoulis, Gibbs, Sørensen, Hernandez, Scholes, Rowe, Ida. So a lot of noticeable absentees there. No Angus Gunn, no Omobamidele, no Borja Sainz. I'm sure there's a few others that we've missed that the comments will talk about, but just to read that again: Tim Krul in goal, Stacey, who I was very impressed with actually on Tuesday night. I thought he was one of the better performers for Norwich. Duffy, get a first look at him today. Gibson and McCallum, the back 4, Nunez and McLean, the midfield 2, Springett, Sargent and Pochetta behind Ashley Barnes, and the subs bench, Reyes, Mumba, Tompkinson, Hills, Yanulis, Gibbs, Sørensen, Hernandez, Scholes, Rowe, Ida. Paddy, I mean, anything in particular spring to mind? I guess the dynamic of the strikers is going to be interesting today, isn't it? I think most people probably feel that he's going to be a 2, that Norwich go into the championship season with probably that 2. but maybe not necessarily in the way that it's laid out there with Sargent in that slightly deeper position, if that's how it obviously translates to being this afternoon.
Well, we'll find out in due course, Connor. But I mean, go back to when we spoke to Ashley at the Fans Forum event at the Forum 2 or 3 weeks back. Effusive, I think, is not an overstatement about what he already got from working with Josh Sargent in a training environment very early in pre-season. I think that was even first training session. Talked about him being a wonderful talent, I think, to paraphrase. So he clearly rates Sargent. I'm sure Sargent, without having spoken to him, will feel the benefit as this season develops of having that experienced player in his area of the pitch to bounce off. And be great to see something today that suggests, those two on the pitch as much as off it, in the interpersonal relationship, that they can actually meld to be really an effective threat. And for me, I know Ida's in this conversation, but post Pookie, I'm looking for Sargent to step up and really keep the foot down, because he started last season very well, went off with America to the World Cup, played, got injured, and then it was a very stop-start and actually culminated in him missing the final game because he had this, was it shin issue, I think, that he was managing to a degree. Clearly no issues with that now because he starts today. But 13 goals I think he finished with. He scored at West Brom that day, that final away game. If they're going to do anything as a collective this season, you need, for me, him to go big and go 15 plus, ideally even up around 20 plus. But I look at the strikers in the mix right here, right now. We don't expect them to add any more at that end of the pitch. So where are the goals coming from? And of the three, Barnes isn't a prolific goal scorer, has a lot of other attributes. So it's Sargent for me, and I'd like to see, starting today, ideally, that you begin to work out, because what it is at this stage still is pieces in the jigsaw, and where Wagner is seeing these fit together. And if we see something today from a Barnes and Sargent axis, that bodes well for the future, albeit with the caveat still heavily into the pre-season fitness element, and it's about minutes, and I'll be surprised if many of the starters are still here beyond half-time. So it might only be a 45-minute experiment, but it'd be good to see something. And then the other one that stands out for me in that 11 is obviously Duffy in alongside Gibson. Could well certainly height in terms of Duffy, but could conceivably be the starting centre backs for Hull on the opening day of the Championship season. I'm a Bama Daly in the mix, but the fact he's not back involved again today, and obviously any not there that you listed, we'll put that to David after the game. I'm sure what he'll say is, I mean, I think they had a triple session planned yesterday or Thursday. It's been double sessions pretty much every other day of the week. I'd imagine he's going to say to us that's precautionary, and maybe, particularly with Bama Daly, maybe science is more about integrating into the group. No need to push them too early at this stage. So, of course, any of those who aren't featuring today, we'll ask David why. But of the ones on duty in that 11, no doubt, Sargent and Barnes, Duffy and Gibson for me. What about you, Connor?
Yeah. Well, just to pick up on that point about strikers, I think Chris Sutton made the point in the column that he does for us on our channels, that Norwich have 3 strikers and not one of them has had a season where they've scored over 20 goals, which is remarkable, really. I think the closest any of them have got is Ashley Barnes, and that was in League One for Brighton in the 2010-11 season when he scored 18. Of course, contextually, he's been playing a lot of Premier League football since then, and maybe you could argue that 11, 12 goals at that level is like double figures in a Championship level. Sargent, of course, still relatively young, I guess, and last year scored 13. That was his best return. Ida, I think he made the point, I'm not saying this, he made the point that he hadn't really scored 20 goals in his senior career, which might be true, but off the top of my head I'm not quite sure. So you are looking for one of those 3, I guess, to step up, and it does make sense that would be Josh Sargent. Yeah,
got a couple of questions here.
Go for it.
Throw them in. Thanks for the questions.
Well, should we talk Borja signs? Because that's an interesting omission. Because I mean, you put that to David after the game on Tuesday, whether he would be involved. I didn't get the sense it was 100% nailed on. I think it was a possibility. Yeah. He has been training with them by all accounts this week. What do you think is maybe the reason for him not being involved today?
Well, you have to deduce, and that's all we are at the moment, that post Barnet, David was very clear that, although caveated, I think they'd had 1 day of physical tests and then one Tuesday AM before they departed for Barnet training session on the grass with him and Duffy, and then we speak to him after Barnet, and the expectation was that if the rest of the week went to plan, he would be involved at some point today. Clearly isn't involved. And as I said, in initial comments, we know that the double and triple sessions are coming thick and fast. And is there a slight fitness-related issue, or whether it can either be one or two things, either that, or they just want to give him a bit more time to integrate. And until we put that to David, we're not going to know. But I'd like to think it isn't an injury-related matter.
Well, there was. If some eagle-eyed people go back and watch the I think it's about a 5-minute video, isn't it, that the club put out of training before this. There's a shot. Well into that video during like a shooting transitional type of drill that they're doing, and you can see Science kind of laying just to the side of one of the posts, getting some sort of his leg looked at. I couldn't tell you what specific area it was because it was kind of in the distance a bit, but it was enough to make out. So and at this stage, to be frank, if there's any kind of issue, Josh Sargent, for example, was left out on Tuesday because they were trying to manage his load. So there are various aspects to this. Of course, he's just arrived in the country. His season didn't end until early June, so that's another aspect. So there's lots of things you can look at. There are players, obviously, with a starting brief today that maybe didn't have that the other night. Looking at Nunez, Stacey, all of these players came into it. Tony Springett and Puerto on either flank. I mean, what do you make of that? It feels maybe like two players that have been in that conversation. Norwich, and you asked David about this, have a lot of wingers at the moment. They'd like to add another. Is this David Wagner looking at the options he has at the moment and making assessments? Do you think Tony Springett, for example, a player he probably won't have seen much of, spent the second half of last season when he came in, obviously in January, on loan to Derby. He played a little bit and then got injured, and that ruled him out. So a look at him. Puerto also has been injured, and also they've been in the building because of internationals and whatnot. Scholes on the bench again, Hernandez on the bench. I mean, there's a lot of options there for Norwich City, and that probably wraps into the Science debate.
Yeah, well, I think at this stage, particularly the level of opponent, two non-league opponents before they fly out to Germany, there'll be ample sports science sort of stuff in and around saying it's about almost evening out the minutes in terms of game time. And for me, these two games, this one and Barnet, are very much that. I certainly don't read anything into a starting lineup that's got Springett and Puerto. Exactly. Full stop. That's all it is at this stage. So I don't think we can extrapolate anything from this about Springett's impressed or Puerto's impressed. What I will go back to, though, is what David did say to that question after the game. And I read it very much that Science is an inked-in, front line option, wide areas. The other 4 or 5 that we've listed there still got it all to prove, and it almost felt like they'll get pre-season to prove it. And then if not, because it's quite clear they are looking still in terms of strengthening in wide areas in the market, I can certainly see a Rowe, Springett. It gets to the point where, okay, David makes a call, maybe not quite in terms of Norwich's championship squad, go out, get some low minutes, maybe even Puerta, Zolis as well. If he doesn't impress to the level where David thinks he can really impact it in a front line sense this season, I could easily see him going out on loan as well. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we get to, certainly beyond the window, and 2 or 3 of those ones are not part of it, certainly in the first part of the season. So when I look at the wide areas in these 2 games today and on Tuesday, I don't really read anything into it in terms of David's thinking for that Hull opener in the Championship. I think it's all to play for in those wide areas. And John Rowe couldn't have done much more than he did Tuesday night. He scored a goal, looked lively in pieces.
Scholes looked pretty lively. Beyond that, obviously, the moment towards the end where he missed, I do think that's maybe a slightly difficult chance for him, but a player of his quality and stature should be putting it away. So, again, it's kind of the blank canvas element to pre-season, isn't it? You can see people grasp opportunities, and for Springett and Puerto, even though we're talking about this being about distributing minutes, they have to see it as an opportunity, right?
They do, and I'll just add on Scholes. Before I'd seen them at Barnet, I was told from people inside the club he'd come back in fantastic shape. His actual body shape had changed, not quite as...
I think we've seen that, haven't we, today?
We've just seen...
Not that we're in any sort of position speaking about...
No, we'll observe. We won't talk from a point of, first world experience on that, but it was noticeable. He does look to have slimmed down his upper body. He looks... I'm going to choose my words. I wouldn't go down the spectrum of saying he was carrying a bit of timber or whatever, but it was just
leaner, isn't he? I think that's probably right.
He looks physically far more, not wiry, that'd be the wrong word, but compared to what he was, which was a very powerful upper body physique, he's gone away and done some work, and whether that is, to improve his output in terms of the physicality and the intensity, I don't know, but that had been said to us, and then David Wagner volunteered it after the Barnet game. He said a different Christos Zolis has come back in terms of his physical shape. So you hope that translates into a player who can really exert the influence we all assumed his talent would when he first came through the door. It hasn't happened so far. David got him back early from 20, let alone last season, because he felt there was a talent. He said he tracked his career earlier on when he was in Germany and he was coming through in Greece. So you sense there's a receptive audience in terms of Zolis and a head coach, but he needs to grasp it now. As David said, him, Guaheta, Springett, Rowe, Onel, they need to do it now in these next 5 or 6 weeks. Otherwise, I don't see him being part of it, if I'm honest.
Yes.
I've got another question about Angus Gunn, mate. Yeah, go on.
I'll read that when you get it up. But I've had a few questions about Angus Gunn. Obviously, we'll put those to David Wagner after the game. So this is from Mr. Bish. Hi guys, thanks for the coverage as always. Our pleasure. Any thoughts on Angus Gunn possibly moving? I think there's been some whispers around Leeds, definitely in the last week or so. Krul seems to have been very visible in promotional images. We'll clear that up in a moment. And I'd imagine Gunn would bring in some sort of fee. He would, and I would imagine he will be a player that has certainly, maybe Souters is a bit strong, but certainly people looking at him with interest. Very highly rated only a few years ago, of course, and there were some excellent displays towards the end of that season. I'm still baffled he didn't get in the top 3 of the club's Player of the Season award. But hey ho, I think he won ours when we put our poll out.
That was good.
Yeah.
He's not injured as far as we're working on it.
He has been in training shots. I mean, the promotional stuff, we can clear that up. That's purely based on which players are in the build. So the away kit is the one, I guess, that's being spoken about. He was away with Scotland, so he wasn't around to do those promotional images. Tim Krul hasn't been away with the Netherlands. He was in the building. That kind of clears up that element, doesn't it? So we'll ask David specifically. He obviously did feature for Scotland. So there's no kind of reason other than kind of what we've discussed more generally as to why he would be missing today. What do you make of Angus Gunn? Just to open that up?
What, in terms of his availability today, or more broadly?
Well, both.
Yeah, I mean today, it's not a huge. I don't think there's any great urge. What do we need to know about Angus Gunn? Because for me, he was Norwich's Player of the Year last year, and not to make the top 3, that still puzzles me. But he's got nothing to prove. He had an extended summer going off and playing with Scotland. McLean's involved today, fair enough, but I guess, I mean, is Reyes on the bench?
He's on the bench.
So, you've got Krul today, very capable, and then we'll see Reyes. And again, given the level of opposition, it's the perfect game to have a proper look at him today for me. So, you're right, he was in the training. He's been back since Monday, Tuesday. I don't read anything into his not being involved today, because what has he got to prove that we don't already know about him? But, as we progress through pre-season, clearly, you'd start to think that he would come back in to the mix.
Mr. Butler arriving.
Yeah. So, and in terms of the start of the summer, end of last season, there was a little bit of talk about Angus, who had a very good season in a very poor season for his club. Now he goes off and plays for England, plays for Scotland.
Do you want to come on?
We're live, mate.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, I didn't realise you were live. So I'm just saying hello, I just been polite. Sorry, I didn't realise.
Oh, you're all right.
No. Yeah, sorry. Hello, everyone on the Pinkin. Hello. Make sure you tune into Radio Norfolk for live updates.
Go away. So I'll blame him for me saying England now. As we know, he's a Scot to his boots, Angus Gunn now. So could I see interest in him? I don't know. It's a difficult one. From his point of view, he's probably waiting to see just how this is going to develop from here. What I'm pretty sure is he would feel he's better than a goalkeeper in a mid-table championship.
Well, we're talking about goalkeepers. Just a bit of news. Archie Mayer's joined Gateshead on a season-long loan, which I think we probably were expecting, weren't we? Him heading out on loan. National League, good gig for him after what was a pretty productive spell at Notts County. But
that all flows into, because obviously McCracken's already gone.
Bardin is still around, isn't he?
But you'd expect him to go on loan. So you're creating problems for yourself if it was a hypothetical situation where Gunn moves on. I think for me it's Gunn, Krul, and it's Reyes now at the start of the season, and they'll take it from there with Gunn for me as the number 1. So yeah, it's inevitable. There might be bits and pieces, particularly with the Farker connection now going in at Leeds. I don't know. I think I did see something about Meslier there and his situation, so they might be looking for a keeper. But it all feels a bit like putting 2 and 2 together and not coming up with 4. So I certainly would rule out that we're not seeing him today because there's something in the pipeline. That's definitely not the case. Not heard anything of that nature. So I think it's simply fitness related why he's not involved today. And moving forward, well, to paraphrase any football manager, David Wagner included, nobody can foresee between now and the end of the window what happens. You'll get situations come up both in and out. And as David said after Barnet, there will be ins, there will be outs. But if you put me on the spot, do I expect Angus Gunn to be in goal for Hull? Yes, I would.
Yep, likewise. I think that wraps us up nicely. I'm sure we could keep going for another 10 minutes, but we better get on with various bits and bobs. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, the Pink and Channel's the place to go, despite what Rob Butler said earlier. For all of the coverage of today's friendly, we've got a live blog over on our Pink and Plus app. Go and join that if you can. And of course, perfect time to sign up because Tuesday we're flying out to Frankfurt. So for obviously the German leg of Norwich City's pre-season tour, which will be interesting. And we of course thank our partners at Cabell Healthcare for their support in that. We'll leave you with a little video of theirs. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the game if you're coming, and we'll see you again very soon.
Caring for others is the greatest privilege that we could have. If we couldn't do that, then I think we'd be in the wrong profession.
It's a job that when you start, you never want to leave, and you can go home knowing that you've made a difference to someone else at night.
That means a visit by someone. As I say, they're not my carers, they're my friends.
It's just so rewarding to go home and know that just because I've been there for a little while, I've made a difference to their life and made an impact.